Welcome back to the Manhattan Project. You know, it's a good thing Deji was not in Manhattan when this all went down.
Yeah.
And thankfully, now that we have the only valuable person from Manhattan with us, nothing of value was lost.
I'm technically not from Manhattan, but I wasn't born. I wasn't born when this came out. You're like 5 years off.
I know. Deji, just roll with that joke, please.
So yeah, oh, are we on the Golden Gate Bridge now? Oh, with giant bowling balls.
Wait. So hang on. So what happened? They were on their way from Florida to New York on the Atlantic Ocean. How the hell did they end up on the other side of the country in San Francisco?
No. I think we're I think we're on the George Washington.
Yeah. Remember this. Manhattan right now is basically Angel Island, so it's above water. So my guess is that's why you're seeing that all around water. That's the logic there.
Possibly. I mean, was there ever a Turtles project
they're doing
where,
sorry.
they locate somewhere?
Not that I'm aware of, but
I misspoke when I said Golden Gate Bridge. I meant the George Washington Bridge. That's the one for New York.
Sure. God, I lost my train of thought. Oh, hey, Bebop.
What are you? We beat you back in Florida. What are you doing back here?
No, that was Grunchuck. That's different.
You look like a rhino back there.
But yeah, I remembered. Basically, they're doing the Mega Man X thing, where they alter the environment constantly to reflect the place in the story, basically in the events. So, all right, moving on. And yes, more ping. And yes, unlike with the previous game, we have different. Well, no, okay, to a bigger extent, I guess, because we have a lot of different colored foot soldiers. We have the pink ones that have the spears. The blue ones that carry these balls, and they're apparently superhuman mutants themselves, apparently. And you know the Stone Warriors.
I do dig the music.
Oh no, definitely. Like, remember, this is '80s Konami. Like Castlevania, Contra. I mean, their games were chock full of awesome tunes.
And Metal Gear.
Oh yeah, Metal Gear as well. Well, Metal Gear 2 specifically, because the first one has the theme of Tara, and that theme is great, but the rest of the soundtrack is just kind of there. It's in Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, that they really started, that the music of that series started really becoming awesome.
Heck, like even Snake's Revenge had a pretty great soundtrack.
Sure, because remember, the original Metal Gear was made by like 5-7 people. It was not because at the time it was an unproven IP made by unproven developers. So yeah, it was only later with Metal Gear 2 that Kojima was given a bigger team and a bigger budget and all that good jazz. So, all right, moving on. Right now with Leo, and yeah, like Dwebs. Oh, hey Slash. And yeah, like Dweb said, for some reason, all the pictures of the turtles, they always have orange in the bandana. Which is weird because you can tell by the in-game sprites that Konami knows the different colors. So how do they screw up the player screen, the player avatars on the bottom of the screen then? Why do they all have orange on their bandanas?
Well, like I said, I wonder if they're referencing the original Laird comic by having them all have the same color, and that does look like a shade of red.
I can kind of understand that, but in that case, they should have made it red instead of orange then.
I wonder if maybe too much red would have been considered taxing since they were using Roth's red there. Like,
too much.
Think of it, even
too much red energy is dangerous.
But yeah, no, Slash, Evil Mutant Turtle, we defeated him.
Yep. Remember this,
Is there any big backstory behind Slash?
Yes, Dej.
Before that, just can you give me a timestamp? Because
sure. Go to 5:10, I guess.
count you in.
We're ready.
All right, just wait a bit. Just finding more purple foot soldiers. All right, and click. So, Dej, your knowledge on Slash, please.
So Slash is weird because he has a different backstory in every incarnation. In the 2012 show, he was Raphael's pet turtle that he had that got mutated. In IDW, he was basically a lab experiment in the same lab that Stockman had the turtles. Well, it was before the Foot Clan broke out.
What about the 2003 show?
I don't think he was in the 2003 show.
I know that they had Donatello mutate into this weird crocodile turtle hybrid. I'm wondering if that was their reference to Slash.
No, remember, because of Peter Lard's dislike towards the 80s show, no character from the 80s show was in the shit. It was in 2003.
Well, hence
Besides,
why I said it was
Bebop and
supposed to be.
Rocksteady.
Well, hence why I said it was supposed to be a reference. You know, like one that they could sneak in.
I don't think so.
Who knows?
If you want to be technical, maybe what Hun's mutation in Turtles Forever was a reference to it.
Maybe.
Have you seen how edgy his design in the Archie comic was?
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
I will say I do dig his 2012 design.
Yeah, I think he's voiced by Cam Clark in that one.
Which is kind of interesting. Which is an interesting casting gag.
And then there's the Mutants in Manhattan design. Oh,
No.
Lord.
No, Corey Feldman, who was the original Donatello.
Yep.
And as for the Mutants in Manhattan design, you're talking about the Platinum title, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's his IDW look.
Yep. The mutants.
Got a bit of a slightly different look in the 2014 3DS game, but yeah.
Yeah, the Platinum Games TMNT game is kind of a loose adaptation of the IDW comics.
Yeah, there was actually a 2014 game, believe it or not.
Wait, I actually forgot. Was there a tie-in game to the Bay movie? The first one?
No. You're talking about Out of the Shadows. That came out in like 2012, and that was a digital-only game. But for some reason, the Bay movie, the sequel to the Bay movie, also had the same name. And I was like, what? Why?
Okay. Yeah, actually, there is. Having looked at that information about each individual Turtles TV show that we've gotten so far, cartoon-wise at least, I love how it's interesting how the only, from what I can tell at least, the only version that doesn't have Splinter be turned into a rat was the 03 one. It said he was a rat originally, but mutated into being more human-like.
Which is based off the Mirage
Yeah, yeah, that's how it is in the original backstory. Because the whole thing where Splinter is a human first and gets into a rat, that was something that the 80s cartoon came up with, which I can understand. It was an attempt to try to fuse both the rat and the human into one character for the sake of streamlining the backstory. Hold on.
But again, I can understand why the 03 one took the direction since.
Well, the 03 one is basically. Well, the 03 show is basically a child-friendly version of the Mirage comic.
And now to ride the Turtle Splinter Manhattan. We got there sooner than I thought we would.
Yeah, we did. Again, all right, we
Usually
are
in a game like this, you know, actually reaching it
Oh,
is
hold
like
on.
one of the
Scene
last
4.
things.
New York has been destroyed. Oh no! New York has been destroyed.
Wait, what?
See, there you go.
Excuse me?
So wait, he just got there and it's been
Did he literally just drop Manhattan onto New York City there?
So basically, we failed. New York's been destroyed.
So what you're saying is this is basically Age of Ultron.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah. The bad ending for Age of Ultron. In this case, it's the turtles. The turtles are fucked up, and we're too late. The city's been destroyed, so there's no point trying to fix everything now, because it's all been wrecked.
I
But
knew Josh
Dwibs.
was unoriginal.
But Dwibs, if we can't save New York, then you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.
Yep.
Avenge what? There's nothing to avenge. It's been destroyed. It'd be like if in Christ, it'd be like if in what would be a good thing to break? It'd be like if in Endgame, you know, Thanos was successful in wiping out everything. It'd be like trying to revenge something then. I'm like, it's a bit late for that. I mean, hell, that's literally what happened at the beginning of the movie. Thor tries to take a revenge, but you know, hell, but as the film established, it's kind of a bit late at that point. All they did was just cut a guy's head off.
But yeah, in the original comic, Amato Yoshi and Orokosaki were, aka Shredder, were members of rival ninja clans, and Orokosaki, of course, kills Amato Yoshi and nearly kills Splinter the rat, because the Splinter is actually the pet rat of Amato Yoshi. Remember the first live action movie does this backstory as well.
As did the 2003 show, yeah.
Yes. However, for the 80s cartoon, what they did is they streamlined it by making it so that what happens is Orokusaki frames Amato Yoshi, and Amato Yoshi is banned from the clan, because in the 80s cartoon they're actually part of the same clan. What Orokusaki does is he frames him for a crime to have him expelled from the clan, which is why he migrates to New York, and then later he finds the 4 little turtles in the sewers, and they become his pets, and he treats them and all that good stuff. Blah blah blah. So basically, the 80s cartoon streamlined things by making them the same character, basically. And I actually like that. You know why? One thing that I like about that, it gives the turtles an extra motivation, because as Leo says very well in the first ever episode of the 80s cartoon, but one day we're going to find this Orokusaki and force him to turn our master into human again. So it does make the fight against Shredder have an extra amount of personal stakes to it. So I actually like that. And again, remember, as we saw, the first NES game even follows through with that. So...
Again, the 80s show is one of those weird cases where, for whatever reason, it apparently dared to go against the original creator's mindset, but ironically, it may have helped the franchise in the long run. And I say dared to go against in quotations because I do feel like Peter Laird is a bit... Okay, I feel like he hates the 80s show too much, like...
Well, that's
honestly,
everybody agrees with that.
I don't feel like the 80s show was really spitting in the face of his original vision.
Well,
sure, it was lighter in tone, but to be fair, that has more so to do with the dictates of, you know, television at the time, as opposed to them wanting to go that way.
Apparently later on, he has acknowledged that without that, the franchise itself probably wouldn't have been as popular as it is now.
I think he hates the showrunner of the 80s show more than anything.
Why?
I mean, I can sort of maybe kind of understand. Like, it is a bit of a... I can imagine to a creator, it is quite a shock seeing something you create that was meant to be really dark to turn into something that isn't dark.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he also hates him because, let's be honest, people probably remember more so the 80s show than the original comic as well.
It's one of those things.
I believe like they had like a conflict, and Lard didn't like his attitude, something like that.
It's one of those things where I get the feeling it also has to do with the fact that, remember, okay, look at it this way. Even to this day, even after all these years, when people think Pokemon, usually the first thing that comes to their mind is the first couple of gens. With the animates, they always think to the Indigo League as the most iconic one. Like, a lot of people like to make jokes about that particular Why is that? Because that season was airing when Pokemon Fever was at its highest peak. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Pokemon was at the apex of its popularity. Same thing with the Turtles. The Turtles 80s cartoon became the most iconic incarnation because it was during the Turtle Mania era where the Turtles were literally as big as Pokemon was in the late 90s. So, and while the 2003 series was indeed very popular and all that stuff and blah blah, it never really reached the heights of popularity as the 80s cartoon. The 80s Turtles were literally the right franchise at the right time, like how Pokemon was the right franchise at the right time in the late 90s. It really was one of those cases of like lightning in a bottle. That kind of stuff that is incredibly hard to reproduce. Like, it's nobody's fault. Like, and there's not really anything you can do about it. It's just something that when it happens, it just happens. And it's even hard to explain why it happens. Like, sometimes it's just lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Again, like, honestly, the big irony is that, well, I am glad that Laird was... He seems to have somewhat come to terms with the 80s show.
Yeah, he eventually calmed down somewhat, apparently.
But yeah, that is just the thing, though, that he does have that show to thank for, arguably propelling his series into stardom. Don't get me wrong. Maybe if the 80s show had failed, eventually a revival of sorts would have brought it. But nah, man, like, the 80s show is very much that anchor. It is like
9 years.
Yeah, not that too. It's still, I think it's still the longest running cartoon. I think 9 seasons.
Yeah, it'll be 2003 lasted for 6 years.
So
you mean aside from The Simpsons?
No, I mean the longest turtle cartoon. I mean.
The longest turtle cartoon. Yeah, no, and I gotta give them credit. They came up with a lot of good ideas to fill for those.
That's because Fred. One of the recurring things in the 80s cartoon was references and parodies of 1950s B sci-fi movies. That's because Fred Wolf is a huge fan. He grew up during that era, and a lot of Turtles episodes are actually parodies. Like, for example, there's an old movie where a woman turns into a giant, and guess what? There's an episode where Irma turns into a giant, and even the title of that episode is a direct reference to that movie's title. So that show was also pretty much a love letter to the 1950s era of sci-fi films, basically.
Well, Joe, but there was that retool at, like, I think it was the 8th season.
Yeah, the Red Sky seasons. Yeah.
All right.
Basically, Batman the animated series became popular, and they decided to try to see if they could, change to accommodate for the times, because at the time. Now, the whole
90s, yeah,
the whole thing that worked in the 80s wasn't not really working anymore. So they were trying to adapt to survive, but it didn't quite really work out.
You know what the next TMNT show?
They probably should have just rebooted it if they wanted to do something dark.
Yeah.
But you know what the next TMNT show should just be?
What?
Copy Batman Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
I think I recalled saying that in an earlier part, or
I
said that during like our playthrough of the second game.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do an 80s take on the Brave and Bold formula.
I feel like I feel like what the IDW comics, based on what I've seen so far, I feel like that's probably the best way to go about it for me. What?
Keep reading. It's still good, but it's like, no, there are things that will not be adapted.
Oh dear.
Oh well, okay. I'm not talking about in terms of specific arcs. If that helps, I'm talking about in terms of the tone, the overall way the characters are written.
What happens? Do they make it that April was actually Shredder in that one?
No. IDW is basically a PG-13 TMNT story.
That's fine by me.
Ah, okay.
I mean, I don't know. Like, based on what I've seen so far, it seems like it still has a good amount of humor. It's not like it's.
Oh yeah, it does.
One thing that surprised me, Fred Wolf was still involved in the at least the first Red Sky season, and I'm like, damn, he was still quite the overall.
Well, Dwebs, remember, Dwebs, the reason the Red Sky seasons were made to begin with was because of a mandate, you know.
That's usually the circumstance behind something like that. I will say this, it wasn't impossible, though. You want to know a series that actually made the transition from somewhat campy to more serious and a bit more gritty, right down to an animation change? Yeah, an animated series.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, first season of that was pretty campy stuff, but then with the second season, we got the cool I Am Iron Man theme song, new animation style.
They still do that.
Exploding.
They still do that. Like, the first season of Adventure Time is mostly random, surreal humor, but by the time we get to seasons 2 and 3, the show becomes a completely different thing, basically.
I mean, it could have worked, but to Fred's credit, it was such a drastic change, and I do get the feeling it wasn't exactly what he and his team were into. Like, okay, now, I'm not going to act like it was god-off or anything. I will say they put in a valiant effort.
Oh no, the Red Sky seasons are still... I still enjoyed the Red Sky seasons. It's just that the show changed so much in tone to the point where, okay, yeah, if you were a fan of what came before, yeah, this is probably going to be a very jarring...
Hey, what do you think about how they handled Shredder in the Red Sky seasons?
I'm actually wondering what Peter Laird thinks of the Red Sky seasons, if that was more akin to what he would have preferred, I guess. Well, here, let me put it this way, like...
Wait, hold on.
Yes?
Manhattan's been taken up in the air. How is stuff like the subway
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it.
It's underground, and in
So
fact,
anyway.
how are we in the sewers in that regard?
Never mind that. So, Pedro, what are you asking?
Stop asking questions and enjoy the show. But anyway, Dwebs, look at it this way. There's a reason why in the nostalgic critic review of Suicide Squad, he has that joke about the whole negative. The chart says that you're supposed to do this, and that. That's because it's a natural thing that happens. Like sometimes, in this case, in the case of the Turtles, Fred Wolf literally got mandates from the high up saying no, Batman is really picking up in popularity, and apparently it's cool for cartoons to be dark and serious now. So you have to make the Turtles dark and serious now.
This is why a lot of times when a very popular bout of media does something egregiously stupid out of nowhere that ends up killing the franchise, 9 times out of 10, and that can usually end up getting tracked back to executive mandates, where executives think that they are better story writers than the actual writers.
To this day, for some reason, executives still are under the impression that this somehow works. So let's completely transform our ongoing series to be more like the competition, because that somehow will make it so that we can compete.
It did last 3 more seasons. So.
It did, but that's the thing. Like, I will argue that, like, if I wanted to watch Batman animated series, I'll just watch Batman animated series, which I do. But
Okay. Let's ignore that though, and let's think about this. Did we actually like the Red Sky season?
I did.
I've never seen it.
I did enjoy them, but at the same time, yeah, I do kind of miss. I feel like the show was trying way too hard to be something it wasn't. You know.
I think someone asked earlier what you thought of the Red Sky Shredder. I heard he didn't last very long, but
no, he did not.
I was the one who asked.
Let me put it this way, Dej. It's one of those cases where you can tell the show is trying hard to be something it's not. You can feel the insecurity in the writing when you watch those seasons. Because
my feeling is somewhat similar in that I don't hate the Red Sky seasons. I do have a bit of a fondness for them, but again, I like them in spite of the shift here. Now, it's one of those cases where it did not immediately kill the series, thank goodness. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what eventually got them to peter out. Eventually,
the first 6 seasons. Sorry. Go on.
With the original formula, I could have seen them going on for as long as can be, essentially. Sure, they would have eventually tuckered out, But I always get that feeling that the shift is really what just eventually led to the show's end, or at the very least, what got them to peter out.
That-
where the show needed
I mean,
to end.
I mean, you can make an argument that the show was trying to grow up with its audience. The problem is that it wasn't a gradual shift. It was literally like season 6 is still the same tone as the previous 5,
7's still the same tone.
and then
Okay.
and then suddenly season 8 comes out, and then suddenly boom, like
Okay, for the sake of a comparison, ignoring the controversy of its writer, I would say the Harry Potter series is a good example of gradually getting
Yeah.
darker and darker as the audience with it grew up, essentially.
Yeah.
The movies even reflect this relatively well, too. I kind of
Definitely.
feel a bit split on how dark some things got, but I will say that the transition was at least gradual enough that it didn't feel like, oh, suddenly we immediately go from, oh, just happy little wizarding chicks to goddamn murder every 10 minutes. Though I do think Rowling got a little too kill. I do think Rowling got a little too kill happy in Deathly Hallows, but I digress.
I mean, hell, even the first film had Harry's parents dying. Well, at least Lily died on screen.
But speaking of Batman, the animated series, here's the IDW crossover with the 2012 TMNT show,
Eh.
which is hilarious.
uninteresting. But
Okay, yeah, I could. Oh god, could you imagine one of the villains of Batman getting defeated by 16-year-old April?
You know, it's funny. They actually give a quote unquote canon explanation to why Scarecrow has a redesign in the later seasons, and it's because of this crossover.
interesting.
He got
Really?
trapped in Dimension X and saw the Krang and got scared.
I mean, Krang is a scary-looking thing, to be fair.
All
Yeah,
right.
but if you see the Krang in the 2012 shows, it's like, yeah, I can understand why he go insane.
Well, he's voiced by Gilbert Gottfried, so
That was certainly a choice.
yeah. See ya.